Hey everybody, great to be back with you here. Mike Fairborn for Swing Trading, the Swing Trading class. Folks, a lot to look at today. There's been some volatility the last few days, hasn't there? And did want to take a look too. We do look at different indicators from time to time, but I want to look at the Arun indicator today. It's an indicator that will oftentimes show strength of trend and the beginning of the trend. Oftentimes is what it tries to do. So I'll look forward to going into that with you today as we tie that in with some of our swing trade setups, many of those flag type patterns, other price patterns that are out there as well. So I'll look forward to getting into it. There's plenty to look at today, and really looking forward to it. We got some review from prior trades. Barb sat in last week. Appreciate her doing that. But yeah, we've got some new ones. We've got actually some old ones I need to take a look at in our review as well from a couple weeks ago that we still have, that have some of them been doing okay. We'll look at one that hasn't, but we'll take a look at that in just a minute. Would like to welcome all of you though. Once again, hello to you, Paul J. Richardson, Dragon Rider. Josh, how's it going? As well as Jackson and Andrew, Mary, Scott, aloha to you, as well as Beth Larson. Good afternoon, and many others that are here. We do have Brett Crowther in the chat. Thanks for being here to help out. Folks, any questions, comments you have, throw those in the chat so we can try to address those for you. And I promise to keep an eye on that chat window as we go through our discussion here, because a lot of those chats I can answer visually too for you, and many of them are just sent to me directly to do just that. So we'll keep an eye on that, but let's go ahead and get the show rolling. Let's dive into some disclosures. Get started here. Information here is for general information purposes only and should not be considered an individualized recommendation or endorsement. Now, options, they do carry a high level of risk. They're not suitable for all investors. Short options can be assigned at any time up to expiration, regardless of the in-the-money amount. An ITM option does have a higher risk of being assigned early. Now, a short put risks purchasing the underlying stock at the strike price when the market price of the stock will likely be lower. Okay, paper money software application is for education purposes only. Investing does involve risk, including the loss of principal. There's no guarantee that execution of a stop order will be at or near the stop price. Past performance is no guarantee of future results and dividends. If we do look at those, in fact, we will have a couple of stocks that do have dividends. They are not guaranteed. And as a quick note too, sometimes from time to time, we will look at futures. And so just the futures charts themselves. We don't trade futures here, anything like that, but we do look at the charts. And so I do have just some disclosures to show you there. All right, just some notes here too, for those of you that are just joining us for the first time. Folks, within this class, we really take the time to just look at that portion of a trend, up or down, that tends to show indications where the most strength might be. This is a flag pattern we're looking at here. In fact, there we go, bull flag right over here. We're just looking for maybe a 3 to 14, sometimes 10 to 14 day windows. I'll just take the high end of that, 3 to 14 days in terms of the rally. We're really looking for strength after a move up and a consolidation, likely just, we're looking at a higher low here. We're looking for that follow through move. We do use price patterns. We do use bull flag patterns to do that. We use we use all kinds of things here. Inverted head and shoulders patterns. I've got some breakouts. I got a triangle today. Not only, I've got a newer triangle to look at, triangle pattern, one of these guys that goes into a sideways range, where there is a measurement here in terms of a potential upside move on some of these that do break out. We've actually got one of those to review, an existing position that did break to the upside of that triangle as well. So just wanted to hit that base because some of you are new, want to let you know what we're doing with swing trades, but it does fit that time frame, normally the 3 to 14 days. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and share our screen here. And boy, is it busy. We got a lot of stuff going on here today. I'm going to take this indicator out for a second. The Arun, we are going to look at the Arun though just momentarily. It's a fascinating indicator. Looking forward to talking about it in a little bit more detail. It's one that I have not used too much, but it is fascinating because it does tie in fairly well with the swing trade time frame. It looks for strength of trend. So looking forward to getting into that just momentarily here. All right, so a look at the market here. You can see where we're at. Interesting, just a couple quick notes, just big picture before we dive on into things. This was an all-time high in here. And you can see above 6,100. We did break above that level, and we might, come back down and test nor near prior highs. Oftentimes, we're dealing with 500 companies in the S&P 500, folks. It's not unusual at all. Many are going up, many are going down, and when you do that, it's sort of an ebbs and a flow, right? Notice the pull, we're breaking, this was actually breaking an all-time high here, I believe. It was. And what did we do? We came right back to the prior high. We broke again. Did we continue up indefinitely? No, we did not. We came right back down again and again and again and again, and we just kind of meandered. Now over here, we did top and we came back down, but you can see over here where we're at. We broke above. And so what is the expectation? A lot of traders would say that they would say it's very, very unlikely that we just go parabolic to the upside here. Instead, the market's already made and captured up a lot of ground over here. In fact, if it does go higher, they might say it's just more likely to do what oftentimes it does, and that is an ebb and a flow. So, point being is we might pull back and rest at support here. Okay, and what is that? That is a flag type pattern, right? So that's something that we might pick up on the flag end of things. Now, I want to review positions first, and then we'll take a look actually on some of our positions in terms of the Rune oscillator too. Now, we don't want to forget our existing indicators that we look at, but we like any additional indications that could help us probably try to build an expectation of a flag pattern or a price pattern continuing on higher. So we're not going to forget what we've learned already, but we would like to introduce new concepts too that are just different and unique and could be helpful in that regard. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and jump on into CAT. This was one, again, so I wasn't here last week. Barb did fill in for me. This is the CAT trade. Caterpillar did have a pretty good rally to the upside as we looked at. This was the consolidation. This was the flag pattern here. And remember what we do like to look for too. I mean, and I think anybody would, is you want to see if it can break out above some highs. Now, we did just barely clear a high here, which was kind of nice too, but we had been building a bit of a higher high and higher low. Our CAT trade, we got in roughly over here. CAT's been doing okay, and just with 50 shares, because it is an expensive stock, it's actually had a pretty decent run in our paper money account. Again, these are just example trades. They are just paper money. Okay, we are extending up a little bit higher. Where is the ultimate price target? I'm not sure why we lost our lines in there, but I thought I did have them drawn in at one point. I'm going to go ahead and just measure those out again. So you can see that flag pattern that we talked about previously. There's the high, the low to the high. We're just looking at the extension of this range, and we might be getting fairly close to it. I'm now going to just duplicate that line and then just drag and drop it right over here and just show you where that kind of extends to. Now, that's just kind of a full retracement of the flag that we looked at in those initial slide decks that we had, but that's kind of the move. And you can see we're making some good progress. Now, the one thing we've talked about too, as we are approaching that T2 target, there are two targets. There's a T1 and a T2. There's your T1 right there. We did hit it and we extended higher. Let's just go ahead and name it though. T1, T2, T2 is a little bit higher. Folks, what do we see happening right before T1? What are we seeing? Excuse me, right before T2. Right before we get to T2. Anything catch your attention that we could be mindful of? We've talked about it a few times in this class, but I just want to throw it out there to you. Again, I just want you guys to be thinking about that, because for the longest time back when I began, and I know you guys, many of you are not beginners and you are more advanced, but I just wanted to say I had to keep relearning this concept, and that is this. I mean, what have we seen over here? I'll just draw a blue line. Help us out. A little bit of resistance. And how many times did I wait for this top right here to occur? As we were struggling, a price, let's just say a price that traded a few times in my life, but we come up here and we're just kind of doing one of these. We're just kind of sitting there and maybe starting to just curve over a little bit. Gosh, I'm just waiting for my target to be hit. But the issue is that we're running into a little bit of resistance. How about RES for short? That's a long word. Resistance. And so we have to be mindful of these areas. And so what I oftentimes will do is take advantage of the tools that are available to us right on the Thinkorswim platform. Okay, how about an alert? How about right in here somewhere? Let me just right click here, just below about 410. I'm right clicking going down, yeah, between, 400, 420 where we're getting close to. Create an alert right there. And I'm just going to say resistance, question mark. And this can text me. It takes about 3 to 5 seconds, even for those alerts that have been out there for, honestly, 2 to 3 years. I had an alert out there about 2.5 years, and I got texted on the break about 5 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds after I was alerted of it. It was a longer term breakout, like a weekly chart breakout. And there you go right there. So I just want to be reminded that there's resistance there. And by the way, if that's just too high, we can always just come down here. Just to say, you know what, I've dropped it a little bit, just dragged and dropped it. But I'm saying, seeing what I could do is just, as I drag and drop it, it will ask me again to replace that old alert, new alert, wham, bam, there we go. Lets me know maybe I could take some off the table. Maybe I take off 25 shares of my 50 shares. So there's something there to be mindful of, okay? Now the other trade, we're just going to keep that, kind of steady as she goes. It's doing quite strong, doing quite well, and it has been strong. But this could be really that tariff play that we've been talking about for a while. This was all about, this breakout, this move was a tariff trade. The administration trying to bring in more manufacturing jobs, and think about Caterpillar as that industrial type equipment. And in fact, it is in the Dow Industrials, which did have a good day today, just as a quick side note. Now, the next one that we've got to look at is Mondelez. This one's been going for quite some time, and you can see, yeah, we've been stuck in this guy for a little bit. And you can see where our target would be if that's a longer term triangle breakout. Here's the triangle. Here's the move to the upside. We refer to this as our cookie trade, an Oreo trade, right? This is the Mondelez company. That was the breakout. We took the trade here. Actually, we took a, yeah, we did. I think we just on the breakout right here. That's a very, very large T2 target. Okay. If we were just looking to trade, for example, the triangle itself, notice it just gets tighter and tighter. But the potential for a price target would be the longest leg of the triangle, the upside and the downside. I'm just eyeballing it is all I'm doing here. I'm going to simply go over here, go back to my drawing tool on Thinkorswim, click on this. I'm going to highlight really the extent of that move, the triangle that's kind of buried in there, but that's the high. See, this is the largest range, the top of the triangle to the bottom. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to, actually, I could just activate it now since I've measured it. I'm going to take it right to the breakout and say, for the triangle, take a look. It's darn near almost 50%. And look where that level puts us at. Let's just drop back. There's all kinds of symmetries in here with these price patterns and targets as well. That's an all-time, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's an all-time, it's a 52-week too high, no doubt about it. We're looking at a one-year chart. That's sort of one of those bigger numbers that prices might gravitate around. 75, 50, 100, 150, 200. It did before. It held up there before. So we just, some traders are looking at this and saying, Mike, we're right kind of there. For some reason, you've got one of these targets up top here. I do. Remember, we added more shares to this one. We're going to take some off at a T1 trade. Some off at T1. And it says it right there, 100. Okay, and we had some off longer, but we had a little bit longer term trade in here too, because it is a fairly big extension. So we need to kind of decide, based on its move, how are we doing? Money flow, outstanding. Now, does that mean it's going to go higher? No. There's no indicator that's like great out there. I mean, it's always works. But we're clearly above our highs over here. This tries to indicate that there is some accumulation occurring, right? I have to say, because you just don't see this too often, we are clearly above these highs. Folks, again, any indicator can fail. There is no perfect indicator, but you don't see this too often. So we'll see if it unfolds or not. It may or may not. But we're already hitting new high levels. But yet, relatively speaking, to prices over here, we're nowhere near it. So that tells us what? What does this indicator tell us? It says that we should get back to at least this range. which is interesting because that's kind of the range of the target of the triangle too. So we want to keep an eye on this and just see what does unfold here. Okay. This one's been doing okay for us. Yeah, we've got a few shares in there. We're going to take some off the table here. I'd actually need to adjust this potential exit level here, noted as the stop. But I did have one at T1. We're a little bit heavy, but we have to kind of decide, it depends on where we're at. Do we just take this up because it looks like it's breaking out? Do we take that up to maybe the 75 range to take that level off there, or do we drop it down? We're really close to a target and taking some off the table. We've had this here for the longest time. I'm just letting you know. That's how you would drag it, and that's how you kind of determine it. But I'll take a little bit off the table and get some profitability under our belt. Maybe we can take off another 100 here and another 100 here. So then in that case, we'd be -1. Target, that's actually a T1 in terms of like a flag. And then you've got, this is the triangle target. That's another -100 if we did that. And then another one here. In other words, we're taking profits as it's unfolding instead of waiting for everything at the very top. Yeah. All right. So there you go. Let's go ahead and look at some others. Now, we did have MPC. MPC's doing okay. This was our other trade. You can see this is really quite long-term. This is Marathon Petroleum, all the way up to near 200. And I did put the target up here at 200. I think we're doing okay on MPC. We did not only a long stock trade. Well, we're up to 100. That's it. PL day. So we were actually down. So today was really the day that brought us into profitability. But we also did, remember, as a comparative trade on this too, for those people that were looking for a more bullish to neutral type target, we sold we did a bull put spread on it over here. In fact, there you go. There's the legs right there. Here's the 160 to 155, a 5 wide. This one too is up. We did 3 contracts on it though. It's up 500. I'm sorry, 495. And this one is down 354. Remember, that's how these work. At expiration, this is where we make our major gain here. And that's 160 right here, as you can see. So at 160, we were looking to see looking at prices to hold above that 160 level. Remember, if it holds up above here, traders would be looking just for it to expire worthless, both of those legs, and they would try to make the max gain, which is the difference between those two strikes. If you're interested in that, go back and view last week's discussion. That would give you more details. I'm sorry, it would actually be 2 weeks ago because Bart filled in for me. But I want to let you know we went through the details on that trade specifically, just highlighting this really quickly for the review because we've got other stocks to look at for new trades today, paper money trades as well. So this is the one that didn't work out so well. It's still holding above our 330 level. This is AppLovin. And as you can see over here, this was just we did not take a long stock trade on this. Instead, what we did is we just did the bull put spread. We sold the 330 and we bought the 320. You can see that actually it is down about 430. And this one is up. So this offsets the difference, right? Because that put went higher. But this one has been sort of looking like, here's one of the things. We did break down right here. And that did make a new low. It doesn't look too hot. Look at this. It came down. This is a very, very weak recovery. Now, on the flip side of the bull, what do we call the other one? The other flag. Because it broke. There's very little recovery here. And it just makes one wonder, do we want to take this to a max loss? Or do we want to maybe take some of this or just close this trade out altogether? That would be the bear flag trade. The bear. And BJ nailed it exactly. It's the bear trade. It's the bear flag. It sort of looks like that. I mean, it's very, very weak. We did have a big volume day. That volume was to the downside. I'll go ahead and take this guy off the table. Yeah, 3 days back, it was right there. That's big. And we had some sellers obviously come in here, and that's a very, very weak recovery, sort of holding right there. I can just keep going back and back and back on this one. Look at that, just similar. I mean, look at that resistance right there. And it's kind of at a big round number. So 350. So I'll go ahead and just close this trade out when we're done. Okay. So we'll get this one out. It just looks like a more of a bearish sort of situation. All right. So I want to talk about the Arun oscillator today in kind of developing and trying to get a little bit more insight. Okay, so more ideas, more indications, more potential for a bull flag pattern or a bear flag to unfold in either direction. So I want to talk about that. And to do this first, let's take these out. I don't want to make this too busy. I've got the Arun in here right now, and I'm going to show it. I'm going to talk about it. Now, the length in terms of the default that we have here is 25 bars. I'm going to keep it at 25, and we'll go from there. Now, hopefully this cyan tends to show up a little bit better than, let's say, the blue, the dark blue. So I'm going to keep that cyan in here. Let's get these a little bit of width on each one of these, though. There we go. So we've got the cyan is kind of like a green. It's more positive, and we've got the red as a down. But let's go over here, and I'm going to show it to you first to just explain some of the details behind it. Now, it does try to find the strength of the initial start of a trend, but I think its strongest indication is the strength of trend. So it looks to see the start of a trend, but the strength of trend is what I wanted to really focus in on today. In other words, there's a lot of different things that an indicator can do, but looking at, its strongest point could be helpful if it lines up with a flag pattern. There's more than one way to trade this, but I was just trying to find the strongest, which is what we're going to talk about right now. But before I do that, a quick note. Most of the indicators we look at, RSI, we looked at MACD, we've used stochastics sometimes as well. They really kind of derive, they take price action, and from that they make it relative to time. The Arun oscillator does just the opposite. It takes time and it makes it relevant to price. And it's looking for highs and lows that have occurred over a rolling 25-day range, but it uses an indication sort of, not exactly like, but like the RSI, and it looks back over, it has a multiplier there of 100, which means that it's a fixed, it keeps it a fixed indicator. So it's going to oscillate. It's going to go within a range, as you can see over here. Okay, but it is unique in a lot of different ways. Let me explain how it could work and where I think it might be the strongest indications. Now, you can see over here, this is the measurement of just kind of a rolling period of highs and lows. Now, up top, I'm looking at this green. It's actually cyan, as you can see right there. Notice it's at the top of its range. Now, some traders, and they might say, Mike, well, you know what? I trade down here. My initial indication is off that bottom when I get the crossover here. Couple things to keep in mind as we look at this. We're looking for the strength on the upside to be really high, and for the downside, in red, I'll put it in red, to be really low, bottoming out. Notice when there is strength, how quickly it will hover at the top, or if there's weakness, it will stay to the bottom. In other words, the weak indication drops all the way to the bottom. The strong indication goes all the way to the top, and look what we've been seeing. It will tend to kind of hold at that range or stay up there in areas of strength. Now, that's right up towards the top. It has no problem at all, like hitting 100 and staying at 100. Okay, so let me highlight this right now. Remember, this is an existing trade that we had on Caterpillar. Notice we ran all the way to the top. We cleared some prior highs, and we got a really interesting indication. This right here, this is the strength of the trend. If you really look at the indicator, you can back test it, you can take a look at it. It's really, really quite strong. But you also need to have with it sort of a confirming indication that you've got weakness down here. You don't want these two lines necessarily parallel or close to each other. You want strength being near the top and weakness being near the bottom. Okay, now look over here with this trade that we had done, and I had no idea, I wasn't even looking at it, but it did give a really, really interesting indication right here. Early. In fact, it's actually, if you look at it, it's actually that bar right there that is showing strength. And like I said, it's not too common. I mean, there were several months in between here and here that you did hit a high, but even more months when there was a difference, a range between the high Arun, the up Arun, and the low Arun. That's what you're really kind of focused in on here. That shows really kind of the real strength of the indication. And look where that lines up at. What do you guys think? That's right where the flag is. It's right as the flag's beginning. Okay, now look at this move over here. Did we hit the high? We did. We hit the high right there. And what happened? Well, we were at resistance. We don't want to, close our eyes and say, let's forget about everything else that's on the chart. We still want to reference what's on the chart. But this is the Arun, also showing that it was parallel. I'll use this in yellow to kind of highlight this. Look where our red line was. Was it at the bottom? Absolutely not. It was high. It was above 30. And you're really looking for that red line to be below 30. And technically, the red line, the cyan line or the green line, whatever you want to color it, to really be above 70. But if it's up at the top of the range, that just shows really, really interesting strength. Okay, so it's this variation right here that we're looking at. I just thought this was fascinating because I was looking at this indicator, learning more about it. This is really sort of a trend-based time relative to price as opposed to price relative to time. Totally different indication, and it will give totally different signs, but right at that flag. Okay, so that was somewhat interesting to see. Now, okay, let's go ahead and look for trades this week, but we do want to reference the Arun as well. Now, there have been a few trades that have been flagging as of late, as we get into that portion of our discussion here. And semiconductors have really been quite strong. Now, they're pulling back right now, but they have led this market up dramatically. And look where that Arun's been lying at. I mean, it's just right in that same range. Although you don't see this too frequently, you're seeing it on a couple of these that are really showing good strength. It's a great reference point, actually. No indicator is perfect, but this could be useful down at the bottom. Conversely, the up is up at the top. Trend strength. This is all about strength here. Now, as we have that in mind, you can see where was the initial flag pattern right here. Were we getting that indication down below? We were. For the flag, I mean, it's right here. I'm just going to line it up this way. I'm just going to say this because it was, we want a kind of a step one and a step two. We don't want to see these parallel lines. That doesn't show the strength of the trend necessarily. You can go back and look at this and, there's a lot. I mean, I've looked at several of these and it's an interesting indication, but it's all built around still the swing trade that we want to see with price action too. So we want to see the flag patterns or whatever price pattern we're looking at, and then dive into the indicators. Now, we're not going to ignore the MACD or the money flow or RSI as well, but this is interesting. It could be interesting for trend trading, which is what this indicator focuses in on, and which is what we focus in on too. The flags between those trend type moves. So let's look at MU right now. You can see us coming down here, but we're still holding up quite strong. Notice we did, even on the end of this flag, where do we hold up at? Folks, we held up above greater than 70 right there. Okay, and this was below 30 and it jumped up a little bit above there, but you can see actually not here. It didn't in this flag pattern, but that's what we're kind of looking at. Now, let's look back over here and just compare that with strength on the trend or where we might find potential support. Support there? Yeah, maybe. What I'm going to do right now is, for now, I'm going to right click and we're going to create an alert just above this high so I can put this trade on for us if in fact it does go up higher. That might be a hold right there if that were the case. Now I'm going to keep watching it throughout this week to see if we do break up higher so I could put this trade on, because these flag patterns have been really, really light. And again, we've talked about some of the investments, particularly, let's say, for example, the next one I want to show you, which is AMD. Same thing with the Arun down below. It's got some indications that tie in pretty well with the trend. And again, this was sort of a double price pattern we looked at. Shoulder, head, shoulder, kind of a higher upper shoulder. But clearly you could see here that there was a flag pattern that did rest near some prior levels. And could we be flagging again. Well, I've had this mark out here for a while because we talked about this last week or the week before, and prices may be coming down to that support level. We're very, very close to it. So I've actually already got an alert in that on this particular one, but now I might want to have one just a little bit higher as well. One to the upside as opposed to one to the downside. So again, right click, create alert, go hold in there, a close above the high of the low day, and we'll kind of narrow this range in here if it does in fact unfold. Remember, this was a trade that was done, the discussion was a little while ago, but it was Saudi Arabia making some big investments. It was over $1 trillion into a combination of AMD as well as NVIDIA. And so I think, by the way, just as a quick note, how's NVIDIA doing? I think it's down today, but it did spike up above a long-term resistance level. Could it flag and hold here? That's sort of a big round number as well. Just going to throw that out to you because those two were included in that reinvest in America type thing. You got those two companies there, NVIDIA and AMD. So maybe some ones to watch. Over here, you could see just tons of strength. Where did we get that initial indication at? Wow, way early on the Arun. Since we're talking about it today, and how long had it been since we'd seen a divergence like that? You know how long it had been? All these months over here. This one doesn't count. This was above 30 and they were parallel. So this one doesn't count. I'm going all the way back to there. See this flag pattern right there? You were below 30 and you're hitting the highs. So again, we have 1 and 2. Taking a look at what's the strongest way to maybe use this indicator, as opposed to, there's probably like 5 other variations that just didn't seem to really maximize the strength of it. And it's funny because sometimes they'll line up very nicely with the flag pattern. Okay. Anyways, I got off track, but that was NVIDIA. These might flag and hold. They've been holding up so well in both fronts on that Arun. The volume's been good too on some of these. So you're going to be seeing like on balance volume and some of these other indicators holding up, not to mention the RSI. Now, maybe one more at the bottom. This is another one though that we could keep an eye on. I mean, shoot, it's NVIDIA, you know, but this is one we're looking at right now. And you can see it's kind of more towards the bottom. I know many of you do like bottom type trades as well. But this just did hit the Arun 100, and we have a previous indication of it right here on this. Kind of after earnings, we got this gap going sideways. You can see that this chart is totally different from many of the other charts we've been looking at. Many of you do like these bottom sort of trades. Maybe there's some value associated with it here. But notice this is just barely sticking its head above this ascending triangle. It's actually a little bit more symmetrical than it is ascending. In other words, you're getting these lower highs and these higher lows into a tighter and tighter range, perhaps a breakout. What would the extension of this move be? It would be, if it's like a flag pattern, it could be something like this. I'm just eyeballing it at 45. And we've had some activity through here too. So maybe that's where ultimately, if it does go to the upside, where it might find some initial sort of resistance there. Well, let's look at this trade. It's this is in the NASDAQ 100. It's in the S&P 500. This is Global Foundries. It's just breaking out right now. We don't know, still about a half hour left to the end of the trading day. So some traders might want to wait. I want to get one under our belt that we're just kind of watching right now though. And let's see, 47.50. So let's go over here into the trade tab. I'm just going to right click. You can see this, the spread is fairly tight. It's over 1 million shares, close to 2 million on the day. The volume, I should say the open interest is very, very light over here on options. I don't know if it's actually doable in many ways. I mean, look at these. Yeah, look at these numbers. Well, there's your bid right there. Heck, we could, buy at 20 and sell at 0. Not going to work for us, at least is what they're showing right there. So what we'll do a right click here. We'll just start this guy off with 100 shares. I'm going to do a custom order, OCO bracket order. And let's set this one up a little bit higher, maybe 42. Actually, that was about 47.50 was that upper target. Okay, we can look at maybe a 3% pullback or a ATR or just trading below a particular range. I think the percentage pullbacks probably make the most sense. Let's set this up as a good tail cancel on both. We'll send this through right now. Okay, so there's a good, well, here is the confirmation dialog box just showing what we're buying, the upper target range, the lower target range, or lower exit, potential exit level, the buying power effect, margin requirement, etc. Okay, so there's the trade. Let's cancel that out, show it to you. Here is that upper level. Let me just do another measurement of that so I can measure the price target in terms of maybe a longer term flag pattern. So it's up about 10 points from there. So I could just do a measurement of like 10-ish right about here. Where does that put us? Yeah, so it's a little bit closer to about 46 right in here. I'm not making it a perfect measurement. I'm just kind of showing you where that extension might be. Notice too that this also, like we said, this ties in pretty well with boom, 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 and resistance right through here. So it might be a struggle to get through that level anyways initially. So we've got that trade on. We do have the stop in place. Now we did put this on right now, folks. I am anticipating that we actually break above this high and we close. I wanted to get a trade under our belt. A lot of these flags are just on in the verge of, or I should say, in the process of forming. You know, but this one is getting a little bit more of a breakout. So with that, if it doesn't break out, again, we've talked about is either pulling that potential exit level on the stop right here, just below the prior range, because if it fakes out, maybe we're not interested in it, or giving it a little bit more room below the last low, this last major low. That gives it more flexibility. Now remember, we did this with Mondelez, and that is why we're still in that Mondelez trade. And oftentimes we'll go for the longer move because we're dealing with a potential triangle. These triangles, I mean, they're volatile, and they can do little fake outs and come back down here and test and break out. Ultimately, Mondelez, we're still in this trade because we gave it a little bit more flexibility. MDLZ. See this over here? We didn't get out. We kept the stop below a lower point, not a higher point, and it in turn has just made higher highs and higher lows. So we gave it some flexibility, in other words. So that could be something that traders might do for this. Now, those two semiconductors that we looked at, they're not the only ones. Marvell, pretty strong. Look at the Arun. Right towards the highs. We just dipped below the 30 on the red. Could this be a long-term reversal? Yeah, it could be. We're coming into this larger gap range where there's oftentimes a lot of resistance there too. Here's AMAT. You can see us up towards this upper channel. In fact, look at this. If you see this on a weekly, you might, maybe a little bit easier to see on the weekly. Shoulder, head, shoulder, right here, perhaps. And so if we take out maybe the neckline here, maybe we could have a longer term weekly trade too. Still falls into the semiconductor group, but there you go. Okay. All right. Yeah. So just, let's see. It seems like the Arun indicator for bullish scenario only. No, it can go either way. Yeah, it can go either way. So a good case in point might be the weakness of a trend come down. I love the question though. So Tony, on that, yeah. So like, how about down here? We have our red really kind of peaking up top. It's showing weakness of the trend. So it says, hey, watch these lows. We might continue to make lower low, lower low, lower low. Were we below our 30? We were right there at that time. Now, ultimately, we went all the way to the bottom, but that says weakness. And what has that underlying trend been? Just the opposite of what we'd normally like to see on the longer term to the upside. This is to the downside. So shoot, there could be further pulling back, and there was. And so it did work out on both fronts. And by the way, this is too a bear flag type pattern right there. I would say that longer term trend is down. Now it was a little bit risky because it was right ahead of earnings. So you always want to be mindful of that, folks. No indicator is perfect, but it does try to pick up on the strength of the trend. So yeah, here's the thing. I wouldn't introduce it to you guys if it didn't have some signs that are showing up, right? So be mindful of it. It could be one that could be used, but be sure to go back test it, make sure you're fine with it in your paper trades and everything like that. All right, folks. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, if you're finding If you're finding this presentation helpful, useful for you, folks, do me a favor, just smash that like button. Let me know that this type of information is useful and you like this type of content as well. Bottom right hand corner of the screen. Encourage you, if you're not already subscribed to our channel, hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you on board if you're not already on board with us. I think many of you are. But here's one too on Apple. Oh, I better clear that out. Apple had an interesting news announcement. I did see it spike, but it's not quite ready with the Arun. You notice this over here? Yeah, Apple, I'm going to just show you guys. This is one I sent this out when the news, pretty close to when the news came out. There was a news flash yesterday about Apple announcing that OpenAI or Anthropic, I didn't even know about Anthropic, was to power Siri, which is interesting because it would put AI behind a voice sort of device, right? And that could be kind of powerful. But that there got us kind of started off the 200 to the 207. We're still kind of in that range. Makes me wonder on Apple what will happen. But you notice over here, we're not quite there yet in terms of just our... We've had just really kind of a solid focus on the Arun today. I don't want to ignore our other indicators. We're definitely going to tap into those in the future. But this is one we'll be able to reference. Okay. Now, with Apple II, I also believe that it did have a TTM squeeze wrapped into it. Not that one. TTM squeeze right there. There we go. Let's click on this. I'm going to take this guy out. We've talked about the TTM squeeze in prior classes. Yes, look at this. So we've been holding in a fairly tight range. Remember, this represents extreme price compression. This is when the Bollinger Band, you get the squeeze popping up when the Bollinger Band comes below the Keltner channel. So it can represent really that extreme low volatility range. And what does that mean? It's kind of like the flag pattern. Remember that discussion we had? We come up here when prices get really tight like this. Well, what happens? Well, sometimes this pops up, and when price coils, it can mean it could be ready for a big move. So another indicator there, it still shows it's coiling. We haven't gone back to an expansion yet, which would be the green dots. When the green dots kick in, perhaps we will have broken higher, flagged, and our Arun will be setting up. Perhaps, we don't know. But it's something to keep an eye on. It could unfold that way. If you guys want to if you want to follow me on X, there is my handle right there. You got to make sure you get this name right though, because there are so many folks out there that do like to well, be imposters. And so you got to make sure it's just Mike Fairborn CS, BOURN. There you go. I'll throw this into the chat if you guys are interested in that. But there you have it. I'd love to have you follow me. If you are interested, I do post financial content as well as, for example, news like that on Apple. Let's hit one more. We're all done after that. We're just about out of time here. But, oh, DGX, potential breakout. These could be very interesting for I might put on some trades this week for us if we do break above these levels. Just going to put another alert in there, confirm and send that in so I am notified of that. The alerts, again, you can get on by clicking on Setup, Application Settings, Notifications to put that in there for you. Let's finish up with Ulta. No, we'll do one more. You can see Ulta kind of in a sort of a longer term flag, getting close. It's expensive stock, 480, and last but not least, Hershey breaking out. That is truly the chocolate trade right there. Look at that. So big day today. We'll see if the volume comes in, the Arun shooting up, and perhaps a future flag in here. All right, everybody. Well, hey, good being with you today. I've appreciated the comments coming through in the chat. The questions, we did get through quite a bit of information there. And I'll look forward to reading through some of those with you, folks. Have a fantastic rest of the day. A good, shorter weekend coming up. Have a great Independence Day. If I don't see you before then, take care, everybody. See you next time.